Hey guys, today I will be making a more in-depth analysis of the 2020 election, basically doing some more categorizations. So first, I'm going to be filling in the solid states for Biden and Trump, and then I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the battleground and the tipping point states. So the battleground states are like the toss-up states, the states that are very close and are basically going to decide the election. But the tipping point states, these states are the ones that are going to get either candidate Joe Biden or Donald Trump over 270 electoral votes. These are going to be the closest states in the entire race. So taking a look at these states currently, many of them are going to be safe for President Trump and Vice President Biden. I am actually going to be filling in the states like Montana, Utah, and Alaska as solid red states, just because the chances of Trump winning these states are still very solid. He might not win by a solid margin in all of these states, but his chances of winning here are all very solid, and this of course would give him the typical 125 safe electoral votes you typically see for President Trump. For Joe Biden, he typically has 212 electoral votes, so I'm going to give him his safe states as well. These safe Democratic states, a lot of these states in the Northeast, as well as many of the states in the West Coast, along with Colorado, New Mexico, and Hawaii. The the first district of Maine and the Maine at-large vote will bring Joe Biden up to 212 electoral votes. So this is my basic map that I use in all of my videos. So these are the battleground states right here, all of these states that you see in yellow, and we'll categorize the green tipping point states in just a bit. So these states are going to get either candidate over 270 electoral votes. You don't have to win all of them, you just have to win over you just have to win enough to get to 270. So obviously here Biden only needs to win 58 electoral votes, while Donald Trump has to win 145 out of these toss-up states or these battleground states worth 201 electoral votes. So of course President Trump has to win many more electoral votes than Joe Biden, because of course he's down at 125 electoral votes. So I'm gonna start off, just go left to right, just basing it on who I think will carry each state. Nevada, I think, will actually go to Joe Biden by a pretty solid margin. Now I'm not doing margins, I'm just going to do likely and solid, but the state of Nevada, honestly, I think is not going to be as close as it was in 2016. Clinton was not expected to win the state. She was down 0.8% on election night. She came back and won the state by 2.4%. Now this was a shock, but of course it did not get her to the electoral vote margin that she needed. Another state that Clinton very narrowly won in 2016 is the state of Minnesota. In 2020, I don't think this is going to be the case. I think that in 2020, Joe Biden's doing much better here. He leads by over 8% in the state of Minnesota right now. 8% in a state that he was barely leading by 3-4 points just a couple weeks ago. He did see a huge dip in his numbers here after the RNC. Many were doubting whether he would be able to even carry the state. However, now I think the state of Minnesota has moved into a much more solid Biden position right now. And finally, the last state that Hillary Clinton won by a very narrow margin in 2016 is the state of New Hampshire. She won this state by 0.4% 4 years ago, and this will give Joe Biden the 232 electoral votes that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. Now, in 2016, what's surprising, honestly, to think about now, because looking at the new data, this is almost definitely not going to happen, Donald Trump won every other state on this map. Basically, every single state that we did not categorize yet in the battleground section here, Trump won in 2016. He won all of these states. Now, at this point, this map is not going to occur. Joe Biden is just so much of a stronger candidate than Clinton was in 2016. She had way too much baggage from being Secretary of State, as well as her emails, which basically just, her emails honestly ruined her presidency or her campaign, because they just came up all the time and they really did, ruin the trust that she had built with the American people for so many decades. And just her mishandling of all of these emails really, I think, did cost her the campaign. At the end, of course, the FBI investigation that was announced just 1 week before the election, or a little bit more than a week, but honestly that really screwed over her campaign in the final days. So now we have 181 battleground states worth left to discuss. So I'm going to start off by taking a look at some of the states that I think are going to go to Trump. Iowa, I think, is going to go to Trump. Honestly, the state might not be polling too well for him, but it wasn't polling too well for him in 2016 like we saw just yesterday. So yesterday we saw that Trump was only leading here by 3% on election night, and he won in this state by 9%. So I do think that even if Trump doesn't outperform his polling numbers by 6%, he's still going to win the state, and he's not going to underperform the polls. If he underperforms the polls in Iowa, I think he's just finished. If he loses Iowa, he's not going to win the election. And then the next state that I think would go to Trump next would be the state of Texas. State of Texas, very similar to Iowa, but I think that according to the historical trends that Republicans have seen in the state of Texas, and according to the polls right now, he would technically lose the state of Texas. We did talk about this yesterday, where Joe Biden would win the state of Texas by around 0.8%. This is just comparing the Trump margin of victory compared to his polling numbers in 2016 and comparing them to 2020, where he now leads barely by 2%, less than 2%. But if we take a look at the historical trends for Republicans in the state of Texas, John McCain underperformed in Texas, Mitt Romney underperformed in Texas, and then Trump underperformed in Texas. So although Trump is still probably going to win, I think he's going to have to outperform the polls if he really wants to do this time around, because if he underperforms like last time, he would lose the state of Texas. There's no way he can win. And if Donald Trump loses the state of Texas, he loses the election. Because if he loses Texas, Joe Biden will be exactly at 270 electoral votes. All he needs is all the Clinton states and the state of Texas, and he wins the election. But I don't think this is going to happen. But if this were to happen, this would honestly be just a huge blow to the GOP. This is their lifeline, honestly, in this election. If Texas goes blue, they can't even get to 270 electoral votes. Biden can carry Texas, and Trump can carry every other yellow state on this map, and it will not make up for the electoral votes that he's going to lose from losing the state of Texas. So the third state in line for President Trump would be the state of Georgia. Honestly, at this point, Georgia is going to be very, very close. And the polling numbers aren't too well for Trump right here. He won this state by 5% in 2016. He now barely leads in this state by 1%. And I think that the Democrats do actually hit a ceiling in this state. They always hit it at around 48, 49%, like we saw with Stacey Abrams in 2018. But still, 48%, it is still growing for the Democrats. They are doing better and better in the state of Georgia as every single election rolls around. And the state of Georgia at this point, I think, is going to go to Trump. I think it's definitely not solid for him, but I would happily place my money on Trump winning the state of Georgia. In the summer, I have given it to Joe Biden before. That was just because he was doing very well. He was leading in the state by around 2% at that time, but the state of Georgia has fallen back into the Trump column. But of course, a lot can change if Trump really does try to get his Supreme Court nomination approved. I really do not think that is going to help him at all. It's going to help the GOP. It's going to make many conservative voters are very happy, but it's also going to make many Republicans unhappy, and basically every single Democrat, because 20% of Republicans do not approve of Donald Trump trying to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg if he does not win the election. So that is 20% of Republicans, and there are less Republicans than Democrats, so 1 out of every 5 Republicans don't come out for him. That's not good. And a lot of them are still going to, but he's still going to lose a lot of the support that he has, seen. And I honestly do not think that it would be too good of a move politically for him to do this, because I think that those who do support him trying to replace Ginsburg so quickly, I think they're going to vote for Trump anyways. Even if he doesn't do this, they're going to vote for the president. But if he does this, he's going to alienate many voters that probably would have voted for him, but the nomination would have pretty much ruined it for President Trump. So I want to take a look at the Biden states. These are the states that I think that the vice president will be able to flip in 2020. And honestly, the states in this map, the most solid state out of the yellow states left is Michigan. This is a state that Trump carried in 2016 by 0.2%. In 2020, I think Biden is definitely going to do much better here. He has been leading in the polls here for the entire election cycle, and he leads by over 7% here. Even if he were to underperform by 7%, he would still win the election. And honestly, the polls are not going to be as wrong as they were in 2016. Clinton only led by around 4% in this state, so her loss was within the margin of error by the polls. However, the margin of error is not does not show that a Trump victory is possible in 2020. The polls would have to be completely wrong if Biden were to lose the state of Michigan right now. And the state of Michigan, honestly, I don't see it going for Trump. Trump basically has never led in a poll here for months. And Michigan, honestly, I think at this point is just in the bag for Joe Biden, putting him up at 248 electoral votes. And another Trump state, the state of Ohio, I think will go to President Trump, 18 electoral votes, very important to his victory in 2016. Honestly, I do not think that he would have done too well if he didn't win the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio has been a bellwether state for decades, over 6 decades. It has predicted every single presidential election correctly, but 2020, I think its streak will break. I think Joe Biden will end up being the victor, and the state of Ohio will go to Donald Trump, breaking its over 60-year streak, just like Missouri broke its over 40-year streak in 2008 when it voted for John McCain by 0.2%, and not Barack Obama, who won the election in 2008. But the state of Ohio, I think, is still going to be very close, definitely closer than Iowa or Georgia. My opinion, this is a state that Biden was able to win with Obama in 2008 and 2012. He did lose this state. I mean, the Democrats did lose this state in 2016 by over 8%, but I think it's definitely going to swing much farther left than it was 4 years ago. But still, I don't think it's going to be able to swing enough to give Joe Biden a victory in the state of Ohio this time around. Following this, I'm going to take a look at the state of Arizona. State of Arizona, I'm going to put into the Biden column. He has peaked in this state a couple of days ago, now leads by almost 5% in a state that Trump won by 3.6% in 2016. State of Arizona honestly is pretty solid for Joe Biden at this point. Really don't see it going for the president. I think that he's not going to have the strongest of victories here, but I think that the Democrats are really taking over the state of Arizona with, of course, Joe Biden having his expected victory and Mark Kelly expected to win by over 10% over Martha McSally in his Senate race, and he is not the incumbent. He is just challenging her, and this is a state that has not gone to a Republican or a Democrat in the presidential level in over 2 decades. The last time that a Democrat won Arizona was Bill Clinton in 1996. After that, it's been Republicans ever since, but the state of Arizona is seeing a lot of its demographic shifting. There are a lot of Latino and Hispanic voters moving into the state. Phoenix is the largest growing city in the entire country, and most of these are people of color who are moving to this state, and those voters typically directly translate to voters who are going to vote for the Democratic Party. So Arizona, I'm going to give to Joe Biden for now. The 2nd District of Maine, I'm also going to give to Joe Biden, as well as the 2nd District of Nebraska. The 2nd District of Maine has traditionally been a Democratic district. For over 20 years, no Republican has been able to carry the 2nd District of Maine except for Donald Trump, just because Hillary Clinton was not popular here. She won by one of the smallest margins seen for a Democrat in the state of Maine in decades, and the state of Maine honestly went for the Democrats in basically every single election in the past 2 to 3 decades, but Clinton lost this in 2016. Trump was able to win it, but I think that Joe Biden, a more typical Democrat, is going to win this back. A typical Democrat, I mean, he's not as polarizing as the other Democratic candidates have been before. If you honestly think about it, Hillary Clinton really alienated many, many voters. Obama did not do this. Obama was very popular. John Kerry did not do this either, nor did Al Gore. If we take a look back, Hillary Clinton really did have a popularity problem, and I think that honestly was the reason why she lost her race. And then the state of North Carolina, I'm going to give to President Trump right now. I would honestly put this as a swing state, but I'm going to give it to President Trump just because North Carolina, I think that due to the voter suppression that is going to occur and has already occurred in North Carolina as it does in the South, I think it's going to give Trump the edge in this state. I have never said North Carolina would go to the president before, But I think that looking at the numbers that show the voter suppression that has been occurring in this state already, as North Carolina has already allowed mail-in votes to come in, definitely I think North Carolina is leaning towards Trump right now, because I think that if every vote was counted fairly, I do think Joe Biden would win the state. But because of this, I think President Trump is going to have a very narrow victory, and also because of the defunding of the post office. This was all deliberately done to harm the Democratic Party in many of these southern states, and just every state in general, because of the mail-in voting that a lot of people are going to be using in this election. So the tipping point states on this map: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. These states, I think, are going to decide the 2020 presidential election. These states will bring either candidate over 270 electoral votes. Joe Biden only needs to win one of them. President Trump has to win all three of them. Currently, I think Joe Biden is going to win at least one of these three states. I think that he's going to win Wisconsin first, followed by Pennsylvania, and then Florida. I think that Trump could definitely win back the state of Florida. And by win back, I mean he is currently expected to lose this state, but I think he could definitely turn this race around here if he really did try. But these states, the state of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, I think are going to be much closer than what the polls do indicate, but I think that at the end of the day, they will project a Biden victory. Florida, I could see it going both ways. Biden has been leading in this state for the entire election cycle. Bloomberg just pledged $100 million to his race here, but I think that state of Florida, a lot of the Hispanic voters and the Cuban voters are not going to come out for Joe Biden. He does have a huge problem with these types of voters, the Latinos, and that Hillary Clinton was able to bring out a lot of Latino voters. Surprisingly, she was not able to bring out the African American voters, but she was able to bring out the Latino voters, and that did help her in some pretty key states like Nevada. But numbers really were not good enough. She did not have the African American numbers to come out for her in states like Florida, nor Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. But these three states, I think, are going to decide the election. Whichever candidate wins these states, Biden needs one, of course. Trump needs all three. So that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel for future daily election content. And leave your thoughts in the comments below, along with any suggestions for videos you'd like to see from me in the future. And I will see you in the next video.